All right, need you paying attention in your seats, hats off like I asked. It's not a distraction. All right, f of x equals this graph, domain, range, increase, decrease. All right, what is the domain? -5 with the bracket, comma, 6 with a parentheses. All right, -5 with the bracket because it's closed, and then 6 because it's with the parentheses because it's open. Yes? All right, range. Does a graph go up and down forever? No, it starts at what y value? What's the lowest y value? Brackets or parentheses? Comma, and then does it go up forever, or does it stop at a certain y value? Stops at 4 brackets or parentheses. The brackets and parentheses are important on domain and range. It's the increase, decrease, constant where I said you can just use parentheses. Okay. Increase. Does my graph increase in one place or more than one place? Okay, so at furthest left, what's the furthest left x value where it starts to increase from? -5, comma, and it increases up to what x value? Negative what? 1. Union, and then it picks back up at what x value? 2. And it continues to what x value? 6. Go ahead. Yes. Okay. Can you?
Yeah.
Yes. But what I just said is I just have you guys use parentheses for increase, decrease, and constants to be safe. But if you're putting your brackets in, -5 would definitely have one. I would be careful with the -1 and the 2 because they're going to coincide with other points. But yes, you can. All right, questions on the increase piece. All right, decrease. Is it more than one place or only one? Only one. Remember, you're reading the x-axis for these. At what x value does it start to decrease? Parentheses 2. All right, questions on that one? All right, next piece is asking us to graph the inverse of this function. Now, I had a few kids as I walked around said, wait, it doesn't have an inverse because it doesn't pass the horizontal line test. Do you guys agree? So that's kind of jumping ahead here. If you know that it doesn't pass the horizontal line test, is the inverse going to be a function? No, you can answer that right away. We have to show it graphically, though, why it's not. All right, so we make our t-chart. Can you guys tell me what your t-chart is from your original, I'll call this f of x. From your original f of x function, it was -5. Keep going.
-3. -1 more.
0,
0, 2, 1.
6, 4. 2, -2. Thank you. It's okay. And this one is closed, and this one is open. Yes or no? All right, f and f inverse. What happens with the inverse? What happens with these points? Flips, so -3, -5, still closed. 1, -1, 0, 0, -2, 2, and 4, 6. And this one is open. And did you guys plot those and graph it? Okay, I'm just going to put the graph up here. Did it come out looking like this? No, it didn't? Okay, let's plot them one by one. 1, 2, 3, -5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that is closed. Right 1, down 1. Connect. 0, 0. Connect. -2, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Connect. 4, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Open. Yeah? Okay, if you didn't get it, did you fix it and understand where the mistake was made? All right. Is this a function? Yes or no? We already figured that out earlier. Is this a function? Okay, how did we know that before we even graphed it? This doing the horizontal line test here? All right, and then because it didn't pass the horizontal line test here, the inverse does not pass the vertical line test, which means no, it's not a function. Got it? All right. I'm going to give you guys answers, and you guys tell me yes or no to do. Negative infinity to 2, union 2 to 3, union 3 to infinity. Do, or do you want me to go over it or not go over it? Okay, this is one of the ones we had in homework questions, yes or no? Is this a test value problem or not a test value problem? Not. Can anybody, I'm just going to at least write this down. Why is it not a test value problem? That does not have an inequality. It's inequality with a degree of 2 or higher. All right, got it? All right, next one, I'm going to give you the answer. Negative infinity, comma, negative 6, the bracket on the negative 6, union 2, bracket on the 2, sorry, 2 to infinity. Okay, was this one a test value problem? Would you like me to go over it? Letter B was. Letter B was. Am I going over? I'll at least start you off. X squared plus 4x minus 12 is greater than or equal to 0. How do we know it's a test value problem? Inequality and a degree that is 2 or higher, greater than 2, greater than or equal to 2. All right, so then when I factor, I do not set it greater than or equal to 0. I set it equal to 0 to find the zeros. That's what I'm looking for. X, and what does it factor to? Plus 6 minus 2, which means I have negative 6, positive 2, open or closed? Closed. All right, and then this is where you do your test values. And those of you that did it come out to be plus, minus, plus? Yep, does anybody need me to show you how to do them? You guys remember how to do them? All right, where do we shade? This tells us to shade where? Positive. And then that comes up being that. Got it? Okay. This is another one that we had on the review worksheet that I just went over right before this. And I asked you guys, what are some other examples of problems like this? And one of you guys gave me x squared plus 64. What's the answer to this one? How do I write that in interval notation? All right, and why is it negative infinity to infinity? Good job, because the denominator will never equal 0. Your restriction is the denominator can't equal 0, and is there any real number for x that will make that equal 0 for x squared plus 64? No, never going to happen. Not negative 8, not positive 8, no real number. So all reals. Yes? Okay. This is another one we had in homework, the homework review worksheet questions that I went over. What's tricky about this one that kids mess up on? Because it can equal to 0, the inside is not greater than and equal to like we're used to. What do we write instead? Just greater than. Why just greater than? Because it's in the denominator. 2 restrictions at one time, definite on the test. All right. Negative x is greater than negative 5. What do you divide both sides by? And what happens when I divide by a negative? X is less than 5. Interval notation. Negative infinity to 5. Again, if this were a multiple choice question, as a distractor, do you think they would have it with a bracket on the 5? Yes. For those students who said, oh, greater than or equal to, like Mrs. Torres always said, but be careful, there's double restrictions on this one. Okay, questions, yes or no? Next one, number 4. I'm going to give you the answer. F inverse of x equals, there are plenty of ways to write it. I'm going to write it this way first. 1/3 x to the third minus 10 over 3. Anybody write it that way? Okay, anybody write it x to the third minus 10 all over 3? Yep, anybody write it a different way? With the 1/3 on the outside of the parentheses? No? All right. I'll accept either one of these, your choice in how you write it. Would you like me to go over it, or are you guys good with this piece? Go over it. Can you guys at least give me the steps? What's the first thing I do? Change f of x to y. And after I do this, before I do any moving around, what do I do? Switch the y and the x. X equals cube root of 3y plus 10. And then I solve for y. What would be the first step? Can I subtract the 10 from the beginning? No, what would I raise both sides to? Cube both sides. X to the third equals this cube root and cube, that's the whole inverse function undoing each other. Where you guys asked about this one, like why does that happen? Inverse functions undo each other, and that's an example of it right there. Inverse functions undo each other, and you're left what's on the inside. All right, and then what would you do next? Subtract the 10 and then divide by 3. Got it? Okay, questions? All right, how did you guys do on number 5? Because that's the one you guys have been saying you've been struggling with. It is 6a plus 3h take away 3. Any of you guys get that? Is this one I definitely need to go over? No? No? But I at least set it up. Only because someone might be afraid. I usually do it like this. You do not have to. Only thing you have to remember is the piece at the end is in parentheses. You do have to distribute. This is the first box. This is the second box. And I set up the skeleton. This is very similar to the one I went over with you guys during the homework question time. All right, in the first box, what goes in the blanks? Thank you. It is this piece right here, a plus h. A plus h. And in the second box, what goes in the blanks? A. All right, and then you guys can finish. On this piece here, what do you do first? Distribute the 3 or FOIL? FOIL first, double distribution, and then distribute your 3. Distribute your negative. Distribute the negative over here as well. And you're good. Would you like me to continue? We're good? Okay, what's the answer for number 6? I purposely gave no space. I purposely did that because I don't want you guys trying to do all this extra work. What's the answer? I most likely will not be so kind on the test. I'm probably going to leave some space as a distractor, like, oh, I have work to do. Is there any work on this one? No. What happens with functions and their inverse functions? They do what to each other? They undo each other. Just like this up here, cube roots and cubes, they undo each other. That is because cube roots and cubes are inverses of each other. All right. All right, so does it matter if the inverse is on the inside or the outside? No. It's always going to be whatever that value is there. X or 8 or 5 or 100 does not matter. Questions on that one?
There's like more than one way to write that, like so that it equals whatever's in the x spot, right?
You could write it like this. F of F inverse. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the position of your F and F inverse does not matter. They still always undo each other. A cube undoes a cube root, and a cube root undoes a cube. Goes both ways. That's the whole if and only if thing that we were talking about before. All right, are we good? Yes? Okay. Write an equation of the line that is perpendicular to blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. I didn't tell you what form to use here, but the test will be specific on to use, what form did you guys use? Point slope?
Yeah.
And that's the best form to use on this one anyway because it requires the least amount of work. The only work is to do what here? Find the slope. Why? Because I'm looking for the line that is perpendicular. Parallel or perpendicular, I'm looking for the slope. All right, did you guys do that already? Can you tell me once you got y by itself what you got? Y equals -3/2 x plus 1? 6? Yes? All right, so what's the slope of this line? What's the slope of this line? -3/2. Now, when I'm looking for perpendicular slope, is it going to be -3/2? Yes or no? No, that's if it's parallel. So what's the perpendicular slope? Positive, opposite, reciprocal. Does that make sense? And then after that, it's easy because I just do y minus, what's the formula? Y minus y equals m parentheses x minus x1, where this y and x are variables, this x1 and y1 is a point. So what is it going to be using this point? Y minus what? 7 equals m, which we said is what for this problem? Positive 2/3. Why don't I use the -3/2? Because it's perpendicular, not parallel. Parentheses x minus -5, which becomes +5. And that's it. No distributing, no getting y by itself. That's it. There were some homework questions that asked for this, and it said give 3 additional points. How would you give 3 additional points given this once you find this equation? Make a table. And if this is any 3, does it matter what x values you pick? Pick 3 x values, plug it in, plug it in, plug it in, and get out your y values. Got it? All right. Find the inverse of blah, 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 graph f and the inverse. Okay. How do I graph x plus 3 quantity squared? What shape is that first off? Parabola shifting which way? Left, how far? And opening upward or downward? And whole parabola or half a parabola with this restriction? Okay, greater than or equal to -3. This is my vertex. Greater than or equal to -3 means the right half or the left half? Greater than or equal to -3. Right half or left half? The right half. All right. What I'd like you to draw on the test as well is what special line do we draw right diagonally down? The y equals x, which means it has a slope of 1 and a y-intercept of 0. All right. And then you can eyeball it. We are going to find it as well. Are you guys okay if we try to graph just eyeballing it first? We will have the function. We will know what it looks like. This point is what? -3, 0. What is the inverse point going to be? 0, -3. And it's going to be symmetrical. So am I going in the right direction? Am I going in the right direction? Like that? Is that reflective across the y equals x line?
What if you plug in values?
Yes, you can plug in values. That definitely would work as well. Yes. I just kind of guessed this one. You could plug in values to get a more of an approximate answer and then flip them. That would work. But I do have to find the inverse anyway. Graph f and its inverse as well as find the inverse. So let's do that now. Y equals x plus 3 squared. What do I do next? With switch. X equals y plus 3 quantity squared. What do I do to both sides? square root. That right there is the inverse happening. Why do we square root? Because inverse functions undo each other. So what happens here with the square root and the squared? They undo each other. That's the whole inverse functions undo each other. Y plus 3 equals x, or the square root of x? All right, and what's the last step? Subtract the 3. Now when I subtract the 3, does that go inside or outside the radical? Outside. So I'm going to write this as f inverse of x. Root x take away 3. What kind of graph is the square root graph? Half of a sideways parabola. Minus 3, it's on the outside. Which way does it shift? Right, left, up, or down? Down, because it's not inside the radical. Do you guys agree?
Yeah.
And did I shift down 3? Yep. And then half that sideways. Okay, so is there more than one way to know what that graph's going to look like? You could eyeball it across the y equals x line, but eventually you're going to know for sure what it looks like when you find the inverse. Questions on that one? Should you know that the domain of one is going to be the range of the other, and vice versa? Yes? All right, we can do a quick check. What's the domain of this graph? They gave it to us right here. What is the domain? X is greater than or equal to, does that make sense? To the right of -3 is where this domain is. Range, instead of x, put y. So the range of this one would be, instead of x, it would be y is greater than or equal to -3. Is that the range of this graph? Is y greater than or equal to -3? Do you see how that works? Yes? So if I asked you for the range of this one, I mean, you could see it graphically, but you could also flip the domain of the original to double check. Questions? Yes?
So just like in like this type of problem, that's like how you graph it.
The half of a sideways parabola? Yes. Yes. So prior knowledge, and I know, I don't know if it was this class or my 6th period that said that they didn't always remember like your absolute value graphs. It's not going to be on the test, but should you know that is a V shape? Yes? Square root graphs, should you know that is half of a sideways parabola? X squared graph, should you know that is a parabola? Yes? And the cubed root, or sorry, x cubed graph is the, that one. And what was the cube root graph? Do you guys remember? The Egyptian one? All right, so which ones are you going to need to know for the test? Of course, parabolas and that one and the x cubed ones, maybe, maybe not. Not to graph, but just knowing whether it's even or odd, or neither. But you should know what the graphs look like for the square root function and the x squared function. Yes, like this one right here. Like this, where you have to graph the square root of x minus 3. She asked, should we know that's half of a sideways parabola? Yes. Was that what you were asking? All right, any other questions?